In this financial education about emergency fund protection, you're about to discover what most middle-class families completely miss about their financial safety net. You've got 3 months saved, maybe 6. That's what the experts told you to do. But here's what nobody's telling you. Your emergency fund protects you from one type of crisis while 3 other financial threats are hunting your family right now. And when they hit, that savings account you worked years to build won't even slow them down. Sarah had $8,000 saved, thought she was protected. Then her daughter needed braces, her car needed transmission work, and her company restructured all in the same quarter. The emergency fund covered exactly one of those events. The other 2, credit cards at 19% interest. Because nobody told her that basic savings only guard one door while your financial house has 4 entrances. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which 3 invisible risks are targeting your family's security, why traditional emergency savings can't stop them, and the specific protection layers that actually shield middle-class households from financial collapse. But first, you need to understand what your emergency fund was actually designed to do. Here's what your emergency fund does brilliantly. It covers sudden expense spikes. Car breaks down, furnace dies in January, emergency room visit with a high deductible. That 3 to 6 months of savings, it's your shield against these one-time financial punches. Research from the J.P. Morgan Chase Institute shows the typical American family faces at least one major expense spike or income dip per year, usually around 3 weeks of income. Your emergency fund handles this. It's the financial oxygen mask that lets you breathe when something breaks or someone gets sick. But here's where most financial advice stops and where your real vulnerability begins. That emergency fund you built with discipline and sacrifice is guarding exactly one type of threat. Think of your financial security like a house with 4 doors. You put a reinforced steel door with 3 deadbolts on the front entrance. That's your emergency savings, solid protection. Except nobody told you about the back door, the side entrance, and the basement window. And while you're standing guard at the front with your savings account, 3 different types of financial emergencies are walking through the other openings you didn't even know existed. Most middle-class families discover this the hard way. Not when one thing goes wrong, but when life does what life does, hits you with multiple events that don't fit the emergency fund playbook. That's when you realize your safety net has holes big enough to fall through. Let me show you the 3 financial threats your basic emergency fund wasn't built to handle. Gap number 1, the lifestyle erosion crisis. This isn't a sudden expense. It's the slow financial bleed that emergency funds can't stop because it doesn't feel like an emergency. Your income stays flat for 3 years while everything else climbs. Groceries cost 18% more, insurance premiums jump, property taxes increase, childcare gets more expensive. Your emergency fund just sits there because technically nothing's broken. No car accident, no medical crisis, no job loss. But your purchasing power is dying by 1,000 cuts, and that savings account can't help you because this isn't the type of emergency it was designed for. According to the Federal Reserve, middle-class families now spend 30% more to maintain the same lifestyle they had 2 decades ago. That's not an emergency fund problem. That's a structural income problem disguised as normal life. And while your savings sit untouched in that account, your actual financial security is eroding every single month. Gap number 2, the opportunity paralysis trap. Your emergency fund is defensive money. It's there to prevent disaster, not to capture advantage. But here's what happens to families without offensive financial tools. You watch opportunities pass by that could have transformed your situation, and you can't touch your emergency savings because you know the moment you do, you're exposed. Your company offers a training program that could lead to a promotion, but it costs $2,000. That money's sitting in your emergency fund, but you can't use it because what if the car breaks next month? A chance to buy into a friend's small business with real potential. Can't touch the savings. What if someone gets sick? So you stay exactly where you are, financially frozen, because the only money you have is locked in defense mode. That's not protection. That's a different kind of trap. And it's costing you more than you realize because the opportunities you miss today determine your income 5 years from now. Gap number 3, the simultaneous crisis reality. This is the one that breaks families. Not one emergency, multiple emergencies that don't care about taking turns. You lose your job, that's what emergency funds are for, right? Except your job loss happened because your industry is contracting, which means finding new work takes longer. While you're job hunting, your spouse's hours get cut. That's 2 income hits at once. Then your teenager needs emergency dental work. That's 3 financial events happening simultaneously, and your 6-month emergency fund just became a 2-month emergency fund because the math doesn't work when life piles on. According to Consumer Financial Protection Bureau data, families with basic emergency savings are still forced to use credit cards, miss bill payments, or withdraw from retirement accounts when they face overlapping financial shocks, because one safety net can't catch 3 falling objects at the same time. This is why 42% of Americans report that money negatively impacts their mental health. Not because they're irresponsible. Because they did everything right, built the emergency fund, and then discovered their protection had blind spots they never knew existed. So here's what actual financial security looks like for middle-class families. Not just one defensive layer, but a protection system that guards all 4 doors. Layer 1, your emergency fund, the foundation. Keep it, that 3 to 6 months of basic expenses stays exactly where it is. This is your first line of defense against single-event crises, but now you know it's not the only line. Layer 2, the inflation buffer, the lifestyle shield. This is separate money, usually 1 to 2 months of expenses, that exists specifically to absorb lifestyle cost increases without touching your emergency fund or going into debt. When groceries cost more, insurance jumps, or your kid needs new everything because they grew 4 inches, this buffer absorbs it. You rebuild this every year because inflation doesn't stop. Think of it like your car's oil. You don't just fill it once and forget it. You maintain it because it prevents engine damage. Same principle. Layer 3, the opportunity fund, the advancement account. This is your offensive money, usually 10 to 20% of your emergency fund size. This is the account you can touch when genuine opportunities appear. Training, education, small business chance, anything that could legitimately increase your income or reduce your costs long-term. The rule, if you use it, you replace it within 90 days. This keeps you from staying financially paralyzed while also maintaining your defensive position. You need both. Layer 4, the income diversity strategy, the multiple door locks. This isn't about savings. This is about not having all your financial security dependent on one income source. Whether that's a side skill you can monetize, a spouse who maintains career options, or simply a professional network you actively maintain so you're not starting from zero if you need new work. Research shows that households with multiple income streams recover from financial shocks 3 times faster than single-income households, even when the total income is the same. Because when one stream gets disrupted, the others keep flowing. Let me show you what this looks like in reality. Marcus, 39, operations manager at a manufacturing company, married to Lisa for 11 years, 2 kids, ages 8 and 6. Household income, $62,000 per year. Living in a 3-bedroom rental, monthly expenses around $4,200. He'd done everything right, built an emergency fund to $7,000 over 4 years. Felt secure for the first time in his adult life. October 14th, 4:18 in the morning. Marcus woke up with his chest tight, not a heart attack, anxiety. The company had just announced restructuring. His position was safe, but his wife Lisa worked at the same company in HR. Her entire department was being outsourced. One income starting in 60 days. They had the emergency fund that was supposed to handle this. Except 2 weeks later, their son broke his arm at soccer practice. Emergency room, orthopedic specialist, physical therapy. Insurance covered most of it, but the deductible and copays, $3,200. Then their 15-year-old car needed transmission work. Not optional, Marcus needed it to get to work. Another $1,800. In 3 weeks, their $7,000 emergency fund was down to $2,000, and Lisa still hadn't found new work. Marcus sat at the kitchen table on a Thursday night, calculator in front of him. The math was brutal. At their burn rate, they had maybe 6 weeks before they'd need credit cards. That's when Lisa said something that changed their approach. We built one wall, we need a perimeter. They made a decision. Once Lisa found work and they rebuilt the emergency fund, they'd build it differently. Not just one account doing all the jobs, but multiple layers doing specific jobs. 14 months later, emergency fund back to $6,000. But now they also had a $1,200 inflation buffer in a separate account for cost increases that weren't emergencies, and a $900 opportunity fund that Marcus used 8 months later when his company offered a 6-month leadership training program. Cost $850. The promotion he got 4 months after finishing, salary increase $8,000 per year. Their financial security didn't come from having more money. It came from organizing their protection system so one crisis couldn't collapse everything. Marcus told his brother over coffee on a Sunday, "I used to think I was safe because I had savings. Now I understand I'm safe because I have layers. When something goes wrong, it hits one layer, not my whole life." Lisa's coworker asked her last month, "You guys seem less stressed about money. What changed?" Lisa's answer, "We stopped trusting one safety net to do 4 different jobs." Marcus didn't become wealthy. He became someone who understands that middle-class financial security isn't about the amount you save. It's about the system you build. Right now, here's your next move. Don't overcomplicate this. If your emergency fund is less than 1 month of expenses, focus only on that first. Get to 1 month, then 3, then 6. You don't build the other layers until you have that foundation solid. If you already have 3 to 6 months saved, choose one additional layer to build next. Most families start with either the inflation buffer or the opportunity fund, whichever pain point they feel more. You don't need all 4 layers built in 90 days. You need a system that grows with you. The inflation buffer is usually the easiest to start. Take your monthly expense increases from last year, divide by 12, and start setting that aside monthly. If you don't know your increases, start with $150 per month for 6 months. That's $900 that absorbs cost jumps without touching your main emergency fund. For the opportunity fund, start with whatever amount wouldn't devastate you if you spent it and had to rebuild. For most middle-class households, that's between $500 and $1,500. The point isn't the size. The point is having money you can actually use for genuine advancement without feeling like you just destroyed your security. The income diversity layer takes longer. That's about building skills, relationships, or side options over months or years. But it starts with a simple question. If my main income disappeared tomorrow, what's my plan for week 2? If your answer is just use savings and hope, then you know that's the layer you need to develop. Here's what changes when you build this way. You stop living in single point of failure mode. One crisis doesn't dominate your entire financial life because your protection has depth, not just height. This is how middle-class families actually stay middle-class instead of sliding backward every time life happens. Not by making more money, by building financial architecture that doesn't collapse when one thing goes wrong. Comment layered protection if you're building beyond basic emergency savings. The video on screen shows you exactly how to build financial resilience when you're living paycheck to paycheck, the mental traps that keep families broke, and the specific system to protect your lifestyle even when income is unstable. Subscribe for financial education that focuses on real middle-class protection, not get-rich schemes. Because your family deserves security that actually works when life gets complicated.